Hey everybody, welcome to the Geek Mom Game of Thrones recap. This is episode 8, The Mountain and the Viper. I am Natanya Barron, founding editor, creative and web director of GeekMom.com, and along with me, as always, are Andrea Schwalm-Stolz, one of our creative. You're now a senior editor creative, I believe is the official title, as well as Michael Harrison, who's from GeekDad.com, and we are here to be your life coaches through this crazy world that is called Game of Thrones in Westeros. Interestingly enough, I missed out on going to Con Carolinas a couple of days ago where George R.R. Martin was, and I'm pretty sure I would have been extremely annoying in his presence, so I'm kind of glad I didn't go because I've been thinking way too much about this stuff. But rather than kind of tiptoe around the bear in the room, as we were just discussing earlier, we thought we would just jump in and talk about the scene, because as good of an episode as it was, and I really do think it was an exceptionally fine episode in many, many ways, they definitely played the whole let's do the last scene and leave everyone just absolutely gasping. And what's interesting is since I just saw this now, because Michael and I actually had to watch it on a day's delay, I got to see the internet reaction over the last 24 hours of people just, jaws dropping. So, so Andrea, you've had the opportunity to watch it twice. Tell us, because a lot of really interesting things happen in this episode, but unfortunately the sort of crazy gore, whatever you want to call the sort of tension of that last scene really sort of obliterate almost everything else.
It hangs over you like a funk afterwards. I liked actually just preceding immediately the action, the conversation between Tyrion and Jaime about their simple cousin Orson and his beetle crushing problem.
I gotta wonder if the name of their cousin is a slight jab at a certain well-known science fiction author.
I was wondering that too.
He had some choice words to say about Game of Thrones and the writing quality of the show fairly recently. So it's pretty interesting.
Oh, has he been critical? I wasn't aware.
Yeah, he has. I think that probably goes to show that it probably was a jab against him.
And I'm okay with that. I'm totally okay with that.
Me too.
Me too.
But initially I was almost like chomping at the bit, like, okay, enough of the dead Beatles. When Jaime says, "Who gives a dusty fuck?" Quote.
That's a great little turn of phrase, though. I kind of want to steal that.
Initially I was there with him, but then I was thinking, it slowed down the pace of the storytelling for a minute, so you could really just be in the moment when that fight started.
Mm-hmm.
The battle started between the two of them, and I thought that it was all perfectly orchestrated. Even having read the book, it was one of those moments where I was like, maybe they'll do it differently.
I know.
Yeah.
I think because I knew it was going to happen, I tried to sort of distance myself a little bit from it so that I don't know, it was like 10 minutes ago, so it was still like, but I was trying, I really loved the combat, the style of fighting that they give to Oberyn, and sort of that, I don't want to say it was D&D fighting, but you definitely had the feeling that this was the tank and this was the rogue, and they're kind of going at it in this really impressive way, but whenever a character says, "This is not the day that I die," you're just like, oh,
dude, don't say that.
Don't do that. And then the longing kisses and the.
And that was, the fact that he kept on repeating, you raped her, you murdered her, you killed her children. It was very, my name is Inigo Montoya.
Yeah, a little bit.
Prepare to die. And it really kind of steered my brain in that, well, he can't die now. Look at how awesome he's being.
I know. And it's a shame, too, because he really, in a show like this where people just expire so quickly, the actor has just portrayed him so wonderfully, and you just like in the books, I didn't really care that much about Oberyn. I mean, he just kind of felt like he came and went, and it was, there's a lot of characters that do that,
Right.
but the portrayal was so amazing and really brought to life the Dornish culture, and
Well, I liked this guy. I
I
did
did
not
too.
want to see his brains running out on the pavement.
I know, and then when it started to happen, I was just like, oh no, they're gonna, oh. I think
I
the
ran out of
worst.
the room. I ran out of the room twice.
Yeah, yeah, and it's. I think that the hardest part is that, as you're pointing out, we read the books, we know how it kind of plays out. You're just hoping it's better if he just stays silent. It's better if the mountain doesn't say anything. It's better if he's just the idiot smashing the beetles, because if he's just the idiot smashing the beetles, it's not as disturbing. But that's what he wastes his last breath on, and it's just
Right.
it's like pure premeditated warped evil, and it's just so it's not
Yeah,
cool.
I mean, there are a lot of theories as to whether or not that the mountain actually did any of that stuff, and that also adds some very interesting spins on why he said what he said at the end there.
Well, it seemed to me that Oberon's point was almost, it would be awesome if I didn't die. I like having sex. I like being alive. I like fighting. But, part of him, I think, also accepted the fact that if I die, my part of this whole thing that I've been doing here in Casterly, I mean, in front of everybody, is bit by bit, cut by cut, impugning the authority of Tywin.
Hmm.
And so that bit at the end, you could either look at it as as just, you should have stopped talking, hubris, tragic flaw, and now you're dead. Or you could look at it as his whole point of going there was to take down the Lannister dynasty, and
Right.
that one way to do it would be to create a profound sense of unease, among the followers, so that he wouldn't have to do all the work himself. And so, like, I was wondering, did he go into this thinking, yeah, I'm gonna, it's okay if I die? Like, I think he did.
I think he did too, and I think we made the point last episode about his age and how he's kind of a little past his prime. I mean, he's certainly made a name for himself. He's really well known, but this would have been worth it for him, I think. And I will say that, so my theory, every episode I think has a thing that they're going for, and I think that this episode was the unexpected turn. So almost every single scene that we saw had an expectation that was not seen all the way through. And
Can we talk about Sansa now?
Yeah, sure. Let's talk about Sansa, because I'm tired of talking about Oberyn, because my heart is still broken and I want to cry in the corner because I really liked him a lot.
I know. Rest in peace, Oberyn.
Apparently there's a really funny conversation with, is it Pablo Pascal, the actor, talking about sort of his irreverent take on the whole thing, and I'm going to see it now that I've seen the episode, but I stayed away from it because I was like, this is just so terrible.
I saw on I think it was Gawker, there's a Lena Headey Instagram shot, and she's going like this over his eyes, and they're both laughing their heads off. Like, I'm glad you guys are sleeping at night.
So Sansa, let's go back to Sansa. What was your thought there, Andrea?
So, I think she's playing the sex card for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's an interesting move for her.
Yeah. Well, I told Michael as we were watching, I was like, I really like. Oh, we lost Michael. Anyway, I really like the show version of Sansa a whole lot more than I like the book version. And it's odd because usually it's been like, if you don't have a point of view of the character, they're harder to understand in the show. But her points of view in the book are just such drudgery. I always felt like Martin just really doesn't give her a chance to grow, and this is like more than she's ever grown in the books. And I was super excited to see her realize it.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought that that last time that you see her, her hair is darker, and she's wearing
oh yeah, she's
kind of dress.
There was some serious cleave going on there. I mean,
I kind of thought she was trying to look like her mother.
Mm-hmm. I definitely she had the hair back the way that Catelyn used to wear it.
Right.
And I think that she's finally realizing, when he gives her that little lecture, when I first saw you, you were just a child, and now ... And she's totally aware all of a sudden. I mean, I really think that scene with the sort of council of folks who were trying to see if Lysa's death was suicide or whatnot, I thought that was just such a tense, wonderful, well-acted scene.
And I thought it was brilliant because there was mostly truth in there, so she could be very convincing, but just a couple of important lies. Oh, he only kissed me on the cheek. Oh, my aunt threw herself out of the moon door. I mean, but outside of that, it was mostly true, so it worked.
Yeah, and all of a sudden, for the first time, she has an upper card because she now has actually done something to put Baelish in her debt.
Right. Well, and that whole scene when she's giving her testimony, at the end she kind of gets up and does the little girl sob, and immediately that woman is by her side comforting her, and it to me that really subverted, like that was who she used to be, so she knew how to play that very convincingly, and the fact that she was completely subverting that for her own use. I thought that was oddly empowering for her. So I'm excited to see what happens next. And there was some major chemistry between her and Baelish.
There was, and I don't want to, I should be creeped out by it, but I'm not as creeped out as I should be.
I want to see what happens next.
I know. It's really kind of twisted and strange. But I was thinking of you, Andrea, was watching it because she was doing her embroidery, and you're always talking about how, oh, Sansa does this lovely embroidery. Well, apparently it's like her hobby, so she's got an Etsy page for all of her embroidery. And I loved how she barely acknowledged that Baelish was in the room, and when she did, she was like, "I know what you want," and that was just that was really, really powerful from a character who, up until this point, still has just kind of been the simpering, like, oh, God, someone's messing with her again. But I'm really glad they're taking this opportunity, which actually reminds me a lot of the sort of Theon Ramsay unexpected turns again. Characters that, have certainly derailed a bit from the books in ways that we haven't necessarily expected. Michael's always the one I'm like, where's Moat Cailin again? Because it's not far from Winterfell. Like, oh right. What a disturbing scene though. I mean, not that we don't expect it from them, but I always feel like they're upping the ante a little bit when it comes to Ramsay.
Well, like you said, there definitely was the each of the scenes was, you were set up for one thing and then it was taken out from under you, and I really didn't think they were going to flay those guys. I don't know why. Probably because I would be a really bad warrior. Okay, let's leave. We can go home now. But and then at the end, as they've recaptured Moat Cailin, and Roose Bolton, says to Ramsay, "Now you are my son officially," and we're on the kingdom that's bigger than the other 6 combined. And then, the wind ruffles meaningfully around their cloaks, and then they trot off. And the last thing Ramsay says is, I think it's going to be time for a bath soon. And so I mean, this is stupid, but I thought, oh, so I guess like he's that for him too. Like they're sexual partners. Is that what he was saying?
Yeah, I picked up on that too for the first time, and I didn't know if I was the only one reading into it. Michael, what did you think? Did you pick up on that, or was that just me and Andrea being weird?
Yeah, I think you're just shipping.
It's Michael. Oh, there he is.
I am not a shipper. I am not shipping at all. But there was definitely a weird touchiness that I did not sense in other episodes.
Well, and my husband goes, why doesn't he just kill himself? And I said, I think it's that he has been so tortured, Theon has been so tortured by Ramsay that he doesn't even think he has the power to do that.
I think, unfortunately, that's just, that his whole story arc is rife with artifice. I mean, George R.R. Martin had to make him do this thing, and it's completely unrealistic, and frankly, I agree with your husband. He should have killed himself a long time ago. There's no reason for Theon Greyjoy to still be around except to further the plot and to make it interesting for the readers.
But it is still interesting.
And I don't go through that sort of torture without and then get handed the opportunity to end it themselves and not take it.
But I don't think he really had the opportunity. I think he was still too scarred at that point. And I thought that Alfie Allen did a really good job in that scene of because for a minute he really does sound right, but he's not actually, what he's saying is not actually what Theon would say. Do you know what I mean? It's
all veneer, and then it starts to
crumble. And then it crumbles very fast. So I don't think he's anywhere near capable of even getting his freedom at that point. And he certainly wasn't last episode when his sister came through. So, I mean, certainly it's a fantasy and it's another world. Maybe psychology works slightly different. The oxygen level in the world could be slightly different. And, I don't know, when you're tortured, maybe it happens a little, but I don't think it's quite as bad as you're saying, Michael. I think it's an important message in a way that they're making.
I think George R.R. Martin just has a thing for dudes getting their dicks cut off, so wanted to put as many of that.
I can't argue with you there. That certainly is another sort of story in this episode about the what was it? The shaft and the rocks.
Pillar and the stones.
The pillar and stones. Shaft and rocks, pillar and stones, tower and boulders. I don't know. But yeah, that doesn't even really play in at this point. I think we're just, I think Theon is the whipping boy of the whole entire series, and he's.
Well, I also think that Theon was so narcissistic beforehand that maybe if you take someone who is already such a narcissist and you put him through that kind of trauma, maybe the one thing that's left is the will to survive under any circumstances. I don't know. I just know that I, at this point, wish that Theon wouldn't get hurt anymore, and I really didn't like him, but I still think I don't need to see any more of him being tortured.
I think what's interesting was the whole Kraken metaphor that Ramsay was making. I kept wondering what happens when the Kraken gets back in the water, though. I think that there was definitely a bit of a foreshadowing there. And
I do think that too. I think that maybe that's why Theon is still around, because the Kraken's going back in the water at some point.
And I hope so. I mean, and just to be frank with y'all, we don't know, so we're not being spoilery here. We're just genuinely curious, and I'm personally fascinated with House Greyjoy. I think they're really cool and weird and bizarre, but whatever. But I do want to know where they're taking it and how we have essentially we've got they're signed up for 2 more seasons now, and we're starting to get to the point where we're probably running out of book.
Yeah.
So where are they going to take this and how are they going to do it? And gosh, I don't know. I probably would have cornered Martin if I'd gone to Con Carolinas and been like, so where is this thing? I'll help you. Give it to me.
When is the next book coming out? Actually, how long has it been since the last one? 2 years?
More than that. Right? Almost 3 years, right? Because I was pregnant with my daughter when I was reading it, and she's
Oh,
2.
That sounds
couldn't
about
he just put out a 500-page book instead of another 1,400-page one? And
Though I was thinking at this point, I mean, maybe this is total heresy to say, but in some ways, I really like so much what they've done with the show that I almost don't care about the books. I mean, I do. Like, I'll read them. Of course, I'll read them. But there's something so they're doing such a good job of boiling down the story and kind of cutting out a lot of that extra fat that just kind of bloats the books a bit and makes them hard for a lot of people to read. And I just think that they're doing a fantastic job. To speak of levity for a minute, I will say the scene with Arya and the Hound was my favorite scene in the whole episode. Her cackle was just phenomenal. And,
that is a cynical sense of humor she's going to have for the rest of her life.
yes. But I appreciate it. I think she appreciates it too. You have to laugh at certain
It's a
points.
survival mechanism, absolutely.
And the look on the Hound's face.
Right. He was poleaxed.
I mean, it was a short scene, but it was definitely
Very effective.
very, very effective. Another one of those just sort of subverted expectations, just thrown right out the door. So we didn't talk about there was another bloodbath in the episode, dripping floorboards and all.
Yeah, right at the beginning.
So Jon Snow said that bad things were going to happen and nobody listened to him, and now Sam's pretty sure that Gilly's dead. I will say, however, that I thought that Pip and all their little pep talk was awesome, because there's so many absolutely useless women in this show. But it was really awesome to be like, hey, she fought off White Walkers and she traveled the wall and she survived Craster. If anybody's gonna be alive through this, it's gonna be Gilly. And he's actually like, yeah, you're right.
What did you think about Ygritte?
She was awesome. She killed that horrible prostitute and
with the belching problem.
Yeah, that was an interesting entry for an episode. Oh, this is the barking episode, just so you guys know, just in case from now on we can't remember the mountain and the viper. This is the belching episode. I don't know if I kind of almost felt like they really needed some disgusting woman. We've had a lot of disgusting men, so they're like, let's just create a really disgusting woman and then kill her.
I kind of felt like that entire section was a super weak way to start this episode, and the way that they showed us that Gilly was probably going to be okay because Ygritte gave her the little shh, and then they cut to the wall where they're all wondering about whether or not she's going to be okay, right?
That was still the weakest, stupidest decision that Sam ever made.
Well, sure. I mean, besides that, it was a weak, stupid decision on the show's part, I think, for kind of I kind of feel like that entire scene at the wall was just kind of pointless. It shows us that Sam is concerned and everything, but we already know everything's going to be okay.
Well, it also, highlights the whole idea of there are 102 of them against 100,000 wildlings. So,
well, they only ever showed 3 of them. I'm convinced they've only cast about 3 of them.
That's the other thing, is they're doing
red-beard, scary head dude and Ygritte are the only ones you ever see that you recognize.
Right. Well, and the Then guy. Was he? Yeah.
He's got the scar is on his head.
Yeah.
Right?
Do we know what his name is?
The dude that talks about eating flesh all the time.
Scary Then guy. Right. Okay.
That's his name in the credits, actually. Scary thin guy.
But I kind of... So, with all of the potential romances out there, we've got our budding Miss Sandai, Grey Worm, that seems to be able to get past the fact that Grey Worm is castrated. I don't have a good feeling about Ygritte and Jon Snow.
Yeah.
I wonder if they are too I don't know. She's more wild than I guess I realized at first.
Yeah, and I think that definitely comes across in the portrayal in the show versus the books, because when you're in Jon's head, no matter how you do it, you still come across this sort of idolized version of her, because she's this beautiful flame-haired woman who, there's just always that lens. And I think that when you get rid of that lens and you're in the show point of view where there is no sort of main focus thought, she's a lot more brutal. I think that's okay. I think we need someone like her.
She spared Gilly. I don't think she's as much of a monster as people like.
I don't think she's. I'm not saying she's a monster, but I think that a lot of men would have probably looked at this woman and a baby and also thought the same thing and spared them. I like to think that anyway.
Not in Westeros, apparently.
Well, I don't know. It was not the best of the scenes, but
well, and it also says to me, she's willing. They're all the wildlings are also willing to create this carnage and just kill everyone in their path. So it definitely sets you up to ask, well, what's going to happen when they do get to the wall? Like, I'm worried about our little crows.
Well, there's only like 6 of them, so I mean, according to the way they're shooting it, there's like.
And I will say that Kit Harington is just unfairly adorable. Like, it's ridiculous.
That's going to come in real handy when he's.
I know, totally. But every time they film him, they're like, let's just film him with his hair in his face and his lips and his eyes sort of smoldering in the distance. Yeah, I mean, they really kind of play that up, I think, because, they killed Oberyn in this episode, and Jaime's, like, maimed and nasty, so nobody cares about him anymore. So they're just like, Team Jon Snow, let's cast him in as sexy light as possible.
That was why I asked.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, that's why I asked Michael last time about Jon Snow, because I think that you and I, Natanya, might be slightly blindered when it comes to really assessing his leadership qualities.
So I may have said something during the episode. So our son is extremely light-haired, blue-eyed, blonde hair, and our daughter is colored like I am with darker hair and darker eyes. And I said, if we had a son, maybe he looked like Kit Harington.
Funny how that worked out,
honey. I'm pretty sure I could almost be his mom. So.
Yeah, I'm not touching this conversation with a 10-foot pole. So, yeah, I mean, as far as his leadership goes, he continues to, at least in the show, just be sort of a chorus.
Yeah.
He's a member of the chorus. He's not stepping up, and it's, I mean, I think that probably follows the book quite a bit up until a certain point, but yeah, he's very kind of bumbling as a leader.
And pouty. Alternatively, bumbling and pouty. Oh, well, with a little stroke of luck every once in a while, though.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Thank God that he, has Craster's wife to distract the big bad so that he can see through the back of the head, because otherwise he would have died.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's definitely one of the slower narratives in the books, and I think I'm kind of hoping that they would take a little more license, like what they did with Sansa, for instance, or what they did with Theon, but it doesn't seem like that's. I think they're just kind of coasting on the good looks and the the smolder.
Yeah, at least stepping up the good looks in other ways and bringing some of the ladies to age. The Sansa reveal was quite a tip of the hat to the the men who were watching the show, I think.
You mean guys watching the show? Oh, right.
Oh, wow. One of them sits next to you while
I know.
You watch it. Just FYI.
I know. No. We were talking about that. So the one that I was actually the most giddy about was the Jorah stuff. I don't know why, but I was like absolutely thrilled to finally see him shown for his true colors. Maybe because it bothers me how he fawns over her and he's sort of the turncoat. And I really love Barristan Selmy, and I loved how that scene played out. And he's like,
there's not room for Barrister Selmy and Jorah in one council.
No, and the way he said, I'm going to tell you man to man first, I was just like, yes, you will, because it's kind of like, I don't know, it's like kind of having like imitation crab and then having actual crab. And now she can't go back. She's had imitation crab this whole time, and now she's got Barristan. And he's like,
it's funny that you mention that, considering Barristan stayed with the king for 12 years, and only when he was dismissed did he go over to find his queen.
That's a good point. Who's the opportunist here?
I think that true colors here is a little harsh, considering that the Jorah, at some point actually started giving false information, stopped spying on her, saved her life.
Well, and I think she acknowledged that, and that's why she let him go without killing him, because she's got enough Dothraki in her that she could have just.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think it makes up for it though. Like if he was really a good guy, he would have come clean to her about it beforehand and said, listen, I'm giving them false information now, but they sent me here to do it. Not like play her along. I mean, he was the only one that she had in the whole entire world. The only person that she felt she could trust.
And she survived. I mean, someone else would not have. I think he fell in love with her and wanted to jump her bones, and that's why he stopped giving as much information. So it's not like it's all noble altruism, but I do think there was a courtly love going on there. He didn't ever attack her. He kind of accepted that at some point that they weren't going to be a couple, and he still I think he was trying to do right by her, but he was in too deep. At what point should he have said to her, hey, can we sit and have a cup of coffee together? I've got something to tell you.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, I just feel like if he's as good as he imagined himself, then he owed her that. I think he wasn't expecting the dragons. I think that was probably the turning point. But I loved Emilia Clarke's delivery. If you notice, when she's kind of giving him the sentence, she's not blinking. She does not even take her eye off of him for a second. I was just watching. I'm like, are you gonna blink? Are you gonna blink? And he's blinking constantly because he's just like, terrified. But she's just, get the F out of my from the first.
But I think I think it was a blow to her. I don't think she did any of that easly. I think she was valuing.
But it's an important lesson. I mean, if we're talking about female characters that have the most growth, if you certainly look from where, if you look at Sansa and you look at Dany, who are round about the same age and kind of both from similar kind of backgrounds, the growth that they've had has just been completely different. Because, I mean, Dany goes from this completely, wide-eyed ingenue character to someone who's dealing out life and death and punishment, and Sansa's still just doing,
needlepoint,
and being like, I'm sexy now. But Dany figured out she was sexy way back in season 1. So
right after she got raped by her husband.
Yeah, and then she fell in love with him, and that's stuff.
So talking about how maybe psychology is different in other worlds.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of it would be interesting to have someone on the show to talk with us who actually has a background in this. And yeah, I mean, I totally get that rape and trauma is part of sort of the high middle age thing that Martin is going after, but it doesn't change the fact that this is not an audience that's familiar with that. Not everyone is like me and studied the Middle Ages for years and is used to reading the Song of Roland where people's brains are being blown out their ears. And it's like, oh, okay, that's kind of a nod to that when you're squishing Oberyn's head. They loved that in the Middle Ages, but we're not used to that anymore. We're also not used to raping and pillaging and trauma and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know.
I mean, if you read about it, like what is it, the Women's Media Center, WMC, I think. I mean, they have a whole column that's just on the use of rape in war, and it's still standard practice, it seems to me. It's just that we haven't had many wars on our home turf, so I don't know if that's just a Middle Ages strategy. Actually.
No, I think it was just, at least if you look at the texts of the Middle Ages and certainly the things that Martin is inspired by when he's writing this, it's certainly part of the whole landscape, and it's not as loaded as it is in our present culture. And I kind of understand what he's saying, but I just don't think you can separate that, or at least you can't be surprised when people are so shocked by it. Anyway, that's just my 5 cents.
We're lucky to be shocked, I think. But I mean, I certainly am, but I think there's a privilege to that too. I don't know.
Part of me wants to see like the internet searches and see what the shock level is, like what the actual amount of searches and things are versus the Jaime Cersei scene. And then, like, Oberyn or Joffrey.
I mean, I guess there's no... It kind of seems like if you need a trigger warning for Game of Thrones at this point, you haven't been paying attention.
Yeah. I
think it almost feels like that's the whole point, to, like, just dig at all of our... At all of our potential triggers and force us to examine them. I think that's part of the plan here.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and this is the thing that is so appealing, I think, is that it does totally explore our perhaps baser, less socially constructed selves. We are extremely socialized creatures now, but we also don't have land to fight for. I'm not worried that someone's going to come and take my house and take my kids and rape me. I don't worry about that on a daily basis. That changes the way that I look at other people.
Right.
But if you're looking, I mean, that's one of the stories that we really don't hear. I think we've had glimpses of it this season, probably with like the old farmer and his daughter, sort of the toll of this war, Tywin's war at this point. I think we can safely call it, on the little people. We really don't know anyone in Westeros that story is being told. So
right.
So as I was saying though, is that doesn't necessarily change the fact though that people are going to watch this and still become extremely uncomfortable because of those scenes and say, hey, this isn't a show for me because of that.
And that's fine.
So that's what I was trying to.
No, I totally agree with you, and that's that. Like if blood, I mean, it's not like they don't put the warning at the beginning of every single episode that there is like nudity, sex, extreme violence, bad language. I mean, it's like if you're kind of missing that and expecting like, Guinevere and Lancelot be running off and frolicking, but even that, like, I mean, if you know anything about the Middle Ages, you know that it never ends okay. When people are like, it's like Camelot, I'm like, you don't want to compare it to Camelot. Camelot was terrible. Everything fell apart, okay? Like, I mean, the tradition, I kind of boil it down to like in the Middle Ages, everything was like, well, everything's going to crap. We might as well have fun and kill crap while we're doing it. Let's try to make some pretty stuff and sing some songs because tomorrow we're going to die. And I certainly think at Moat Cailin you got the idea that like they could have just gone in there anyway. I don't really even know why they made the attempt, but it's miserable. Like you capture a castle, then you're stuck there, and they all have like the plague and they're coughing up blood. I mean, what is winning in this world?
I have to admit, though, the coming full circle to the fight scene at the end, the brutality, the sheer brutality of the way they showed Oberyn dying, I had a moment of, I might have just hit my limit. Like, I'm going to continue to watch, but I'm feeling, like, protective of myself now. I mean, it sucks energy out of me to watch that level of violence.
Yeah. So, but, someone would say the same thing about rape. You know, it hits people in different ways. And it's all about the line of what is gratuitous and what isn't. Was the scene where the mountain crushed Oberyn's head gratuitous?
I think I got close to thinking. I mean, actually, I do think it was gratuitous.
I actually think that it was exhibitive of the mountain's character. And it served a purpose to show that he is the most brutal warrior in the entire land, that he would kill someone that way.
And
even though he's dying,
I get that, and I agree with you. At the same time, I'm just saying that came close to me saying, maybe I'll just go back to the books. That was, I had a hard time. Like I said, I ran out of the room twice. I couldn't.
And so your limit is in that case is the gore, the sort of gratuitous gore, whereas for other people the limit may be something else entirely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's kind of the point where they have to walk it. Yeah, sure, the Middle Ages were terrible, but they were gory, and there was rape, and you know, people starved, and there are all of these things that may potentially push someone over that line. And this show has a really hard time about treading carefully on those lines.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point too. Is that I think, but you said earlier, Andrea, you said that we're very lucky to have these things be triggers for us. We are extremely lucky, and that, you know, we even 100 years ago it was very different. Or 150, 250 years ago, talk about things like the Civil War. People actually saw this happening in their backyards. You know, people were picnicking, watching people be exploded with cannons. And certainly the generation that was in Vietnam, and anyone who's been, you know, through a war sees this, but in a different way. We, in general, we haven't seen anything, you know, to the effect, except maybe 9/11, but everyone talks about that. But very few people were actually there to see it. It was all very, you know, sensationalized. I think they're trying to show that brutality and say this is part of everyone's daily life. And I think Michael's right in that in this. I'm hoping, knock on wood, that, you know, this tends to be. There's 2 more episodes left. This was sort of their red wedding moment, you know,
right?
Because it was so absolutely. The camera just lingered seconds longer than it had to, but they kind of like to take that hangnail that you have on your finger and just continue to pull and just wait to just rip it, and then they're not even quite doing it yet. You have to watch it. Just, I mean, it is. You know, I would probably go as far to say that Michael is a little bit more desensitized, perhaps, to violence than I am. I grew up in a very non-violent environment where I saw almost no gory movies until I was well into my teens and 20s. So to me, I still have that, just like, I feel it. Like I feel like I want to throw up.
Right.
It's just not something I'm used to seeing. But, you know, some people, I can't even imagine what it must be like for some people who've either been to war or lived in places. You know, we had a friend from Lebanon growing up, and just the stories that he told about, you know, cousins being blown up across the street. You know, it's
I think that understanding that privilege and recognizing it and being sensitive to it when you're watching a show like this, I mean, and not just when you're watching a show like this, but when you're just going through your life, it's something that a lot of people have issues with. And, you know, whether it's violence or what, it's just something that you have to be aware of and not be a jerk about it.
Yeah. So this begs. I think we've covered all of the storylines in the episode. What do we think? What do we think they're trying to say with this episode? Just to bring it to a close here. What about this point of a show that it already on the record? I mean, I was just noticing as I was posting this to the Geek Mom Facebook page. The page for Game of Thrones has 11 million likes. I mean, 11 million. In this day and age, that's a big number for something that started off as kind of a, you know, an underground hit with the total nerd community. This is really hitting something with people. And a whole episode that was dedicated to turning at the last moment and changing what you thought. Why now? Why? I mean, without being spoilery, I think we almost had a spoiler cast this week and it didn't quite work. So I think we're going to certainly try to do one at least at the end of the season this year. But why? And maybe take off our hats as like book readers and think about this in terms of cinematics of storytelling to the general audience who hasn't read this. Why this episode now? Maybe I'm being too deep. Maybe I had too many glasses of wine. It's totally possible.
Well, I mean, it certainly sets you. The episode certainly sets you up for kind of a who knows what's going to happen in the grand finale. Kind of heightens expectations and anxieties, and we know that at the end of each season something giant happens, and and this is part of the build-up that nobody's safe. I mean, whatever you think about this world and these characters can change at a moment's notice. So maybe it's just that heightening.
They're just beetles getting crushed.
Yeah, and I think that might be as
soon,
disturbing as that is.
And soon the ass is going to come and kick us all.
But I almost feel like the takeaway from that was not so much the story of the beetles, but the fact that Tyrion spent so much time thinking about it.
Yeah.
And as he was saying, Father was telling us about family legacies and teaching us the histories of all this stuff, and all I could think about was, Orson killing the beetles over and over again. He was dreaming about it. It was just absolutely infecting every part of his life.
Because Tyrion is the philosopher,
but even he couldn't figure it out, though.
Right, because there's no explanation. It's just a bunch of
the human condition on a much darker scale, I guess.
I feel like I need to go watch Cosmos now and just cleanse my brain and get that macro view, step back.
That's actually a really good idea.
All right, well, folks.
I've got too much cold medicine in my system for Cosmos.
Yeah, poor Michael. He's been suffering through a cold, and our kid's been sick. It's been all kinds of fun, but well, I think we're in a good place. We've got 2 more episodes to go. There's certainly a lot happening. I know we want to talk about where we think that season 5 is going to go, and perhaps season 6, and see what happens. But in the meantime, to get your daily dose of geek, you can always go to geekmom.com and geekdad.com. Thank you for listening. As always, I am Natanya Barron, and the lovely Andrea Schwalm-Stoltz, and the wonderful Michael Harrison, all here for your enjoyment and, whatever. We do appreciate your comments. Feel free to leave more. We will try to be conversant during the week. I know Michael's pretty darn good about jumping in there to the comments. You guys are the best, and I hope that none of you are suffering from PTSD and you can get through the next 2 episodes. And if you have any particular concerns, we'd love to help walk you through. And we will definitely try to do a spoiler cast because I think more now than before, we certainly want to try to figure out where exactly this is all going to go and how this measures up with the book. So until then, have a wonderful week, and we'll see you next week and see what happens in Westeros. Toodaloo.